You know that feeling, right? You're staring at a workplace policy, and it feels like you're trying to read a completely different language. Well, it's a super common problem. So today, we're going to crack the code on those confusing corporate rules. We're going to give you the tools to handle them with total confidence.
So let's just dive right in with a classic example. A return policy says an item has to be in reasonable condition. Okay, but what does that actually mean? Is one little scratch okay? What if the box is kind of dented but the product is fine? This is exactly the kind of fuzzy language that can trip you up and lead to some pretty big mistakes.
You know, I like to think of it like building furniture. You get that manual with all the little pictures and steps. If you miss one screw, one tiny instruction, what happens? You end up with a wobbly chair that nobody wants to sit on. Corporate policies are pretty much the same. If you overlook just one little detail, it can cause major headaches later on. Precision is everything.
Okay, so first things first, let's start by deconstructing some simple rules. Before we can get into the really tricky language, we've got to have a solid foundation, and that means knowing exactly how to break down a clear, straightforward instruction when you see one.
All right, take a look at this policy. There's not a lot of mystery here, right? It's just facts. But the real skill is being able to pull out the essential information, like instantly. Let's break down exactly how to do that. So in that one simple sentence, there are two absolutely critical pieces of information. First up, you've got a time marker, that 48-hour window. You're on the clock. And second, there's a clear requirement. You have to get a manager's approval. Being able to spot these key facts right away is the very first step to making sure you don't make a mistake.
All right, now for the main event, the reasonable condition puzzle. This is where it gets interesting. What happens when the rules aren't so clear-cut? This is where we have to put on our detective hats and learn how to solve the puzzle of that vague language, just like in our reasonable condition example.
And here it is again, our mystery phrase, reasonable condition. But look closely. Notice how this policy connects it to something else, the need for original documents and packaging. Now, this is absolutely crucial. On its own, reasonable can mean anything to anybody. But in a policy like this, the context gives it a very, very specific meaning.
So this is the big question, isn't it? We can't just guess what it means, because if you guess wrong, that could mean your return gets rejected flat out. But the good news is, the answer is usually hiding in plain sight, right there in the sentence itself.
So how do we find that hidden answer? Well, the secret is using context. This is the whole point. Context is your secret weapon, it's your codebreaker. The words surrounding that tricky phrase are the clues that unlock its true meaning.
Look at how this works. On one side, we have our puzzle, the phrase reasonable condition, and on the other side, we have the key, our clue, the requirement to include all original documents and packaging. The clue is right there in the same sentence, and it's what defines the puzzle.
And here it is, the aha moment. Think about it. If a company requires all the original packaging and all the documents, what are they really telling you? They want the product back in a state where they can sell it to someone else. It has to be resellable. So suddenly, reasonable condition isn't vague at all. It means not broken, not heavily used, and ready to go right back on the shelf.
You know, the best part is that this isn't just some one-time trick. It's a really powerful skill you can use on any workplace document that comes your way. So let's wrap this all up with a simple toolkit you can use anytime you're facing a confusing policy. Here it is, your 3 steps to becoming a policy expert. First, scan for the basics, the actions and the deadlines, the stuff that tells you what to do and when you have to do it. Second, actively build your work-related vocabulary. The more words you know, the faster you'll get it. And third, always use context to solve for any unclear words, just like we did with reasonable condition. So now it's your turn. Think about your own workplace for a second. Is there a policy, maybe an instruction, that's always seemed a little bit fuzzy? Using this toolkit, you now have the power to decode it. Go on, give it a try.